Hey there everyone, A Knife's Tale here, and I'm bringing you a review of this Arno Bernard Imamba. This is a really cool knife made coming from South Africa. It kind of bridges the gap between production and semi-custom kind of stuff. There's some hand finishing and stuff like that. And honestly, there's been a lot of comparisons between this knife and Chris Reeve, and for good reason. It just feels like the tolerances and the precision and the extra level step of quality is there. So maybe you're not getting as fancy and flashy as some things that you might get out of a Chinese-made knife or like a real crazy custom that's much more expensive, but you're getting that higher step of execution even, if that makes sense, than most other knives. Similar to Chris Reeve, you just get that solidity and pristine crispness and almost an heirloom quality to it. That's just, this is a working knife that's going to last. TLDR, I love it. 3 3/8 on the blade length. Little over 7 7/8 on the overall, and a little over 4.5 for the handle. Let's do a quick comparison, and everything's falling. And I'm going to apologize now because the dog has been bugging the crap out of me. I'm giving him all of the attention, and he just says more. I demand more. He is a more dog. Conspirator for full size, Elementum for small. It is very close to the Conspirator, tiny bit shorter, tiny bit. Otherwise, the overall profile, open and close, is very close to the Conspirator, though there is one thing to note. There are two different thicknesses on this, because the inlays are done very thick. They stand proud. You can get a plain titanium version of this knife that is not as thick before we actually move on to fighting with the calipers as a comparison to AA batteries. And now, the Nemesis. Always to 5. Always to -5. Okay. 0. Okay, so if you get a plain titanium with no inlays, which they do come in, you're looking at 439, 440 thousandths. Pretty thin, actually. With the inlays, you're looking at 536 thousandths, so almost a full 100 thousandths of an inch difference between this. It's noticeable. These things definitely stand out and make or sit more proudly. 123 on the blade stock, apparently. Behind the edge, on this knife, it is hollow ground at about 14.5 to 15 thousandths. Quite thin, quite slicey. It performs really, really well. Hardware. Hardware is a joy because guess what? The body hardware is all T8. Even the thing you'll never have to mess with, the lock bar insert, which functions as an over travel stop. This, the pivot, which is, I really like these pivots, just the look of them. These are T20s. A little bit big, actually, even for T20s. You got a little bit of room. But it's a T20. It's not a T25. Great hardware sizes. No complaints there. Weight. About 4 ounces. Not an ounce an inch, but not heavy in the slightest. Very nice. And that's sort of what this thing does everywhere. Be very, very nice. What are we looking at? We're looking at RWL 34 with a sort of a satin mirror polish on it. It does fingerprint, but it doesn't do it as bad as a full mirror polish, so it's going to just be a little bit better. You can also get a Stonewash variant. You can get a Damasteel variant of these things. They come in a lot of options, actually. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Great jimping. We've got Flipper with, even though this is weird, rounded, big jimping, somehow it catches you. It's great. The Flipper works great. The opening fuller aperture is a little hard to do sometimes under the camera, but I will say that, well, that was me, but I will say that the new current gen ones have this cut out completely. So, even though it's not a problem, it will be even better now because you have complete access. We're looking at titanium with Arno Bernard logo right there. The blade is sterile. The plunge grind does come really close to the edge, but I mean, you can cut in a choil, you can do whatever you want. This knife is meant to be used and made, and so I guess they're just letting you do what you're going to do. I'm not really going to hold it against them. May even be a hand ground blade. There's a lot of finishing that goes into this thing, clearly. And again, as you're bridging the gap into the semi-custom world, you sort of kind of realize that those things are just going to be on some of the things. It's an element that's possible when you get a hand ground blade. If this is a hand ground blade, it might not be, who knows. But it's definitely got handwork done to it, I mean, obviously. It's just something you're going to have to realize that does show up. But it doesn't come quite to the plunge. It's got a little bit behind, so you've got basically the height of the plunge there to cut into, and then you can do whatever you want cutting into it because it's not contacting anything. Flipper is. Where was I? We're going back to the handle. Titanium, big old pivot on bearings. Wow, I just slipped off the flipper tab after saying it was amazing. I've never actually had that happen until just now. Never once. Like, this is not a hard flipper. This is not a flipper that you're going to fall off of. At all. Okay. In this case, mine has blue dyed kudu bone, which is an animal from Africa. There are all different kinds of inlay options. There's carbon fiber, there's bones, there's woolly mammoth, and ironwood. I don't know if there's other woods, but I've seen ironwood a couple times. They vary the price, but they're executed really well. I mean, this is really consistent. I mean, it stands out proud, but it feels really good. And honestly, I like having that little extra bit of thickness on there. So I'm not sure how I'd feel about one that's not got an inlay on it. But as far as the inlay goes, I love it. So, standoff. It comes with this lanyard thing. Not really a lanyard thing, but this little dangler on the back end of this thing. I guess it is a lanyard thing, yeah. It came that way. I haven't cut it off because it's just kind of interesting. I have no lanyards on anything else, and it's just, I mean, this thing came from South Africa. It's just cool. It's cool to have. And it's well done. Good, solid grip, too. Yep. As you can hear, the detent is very snappy, and very, very smooth. Like, I mean, this is glassy, super consistent smooth. This is not drop shot. It is shake shot, but oh my word, is it smooth and consistent on the way down. It just feels like it's... In fact, let's see, if I were to put a tiny dollop, but I haven't carried it too recently, so it might be a little bit dry. So if I'm just going to touch the lock bar, detent ball with a bit of oil. Yeah, see? It's just so unbelievably smooth, but it's so consistent. I mean, it somehow feels even better, but it felt darn near perfect before. Yeah, it's glass. There's no friction. You don't feel anything. They're awesome. They're well made. Again, also a reason why it's compared to Chris Rig. Just this action is just so almost hydraulic. I mean, it's not on washers, but it's still almost hydraulic in its own unique way. We have a pocket clip. Not deep carry, of course, but titanium milled. Very nice. Works really well. I will say that in the hand, for my hands, I kind of wish the pocket clip was either a little shorter or didn't have quite as much of a bill on the end. Because I can feel that the tip of it, it's not uncomfortable, not by any means. I'm not unhappy with what I'm feeling. In fact, it's super comfortable. It almost disappears completely in this grip. I mostly feel it just like this, just a hint. But I do think maybe just a tiny bit shorter, or just get a little bit of that off of there. That's a personal thing. Mileage may vary, of course, but I mean, it's still super comfortable. It's still super ergonomic. It's you could do on this thing all day, no problem. It's a great knife for that. It's a workhorse. It could be, if that's what you want to use it as. Could be an heirloom. It's got a crown spine with... They didn't make my big mistake, or not my big mistake, but my pet peeve, where you crown even the jimping area too much, and you end up with apex jimping, where you're coming in contact with that center point first, and it feels sharp. No. This is wonderful jimping. Texture for days, perfect knockdown, love it. And the crown spine is well executed. And as you can see, it's blasted in this filler. Love that. I really like these inlays quite a bit. And I like that they left you some thickness to them. Again, I don't know about a non-inlaid one. Maybe the clip would actually be uncomfortable for me. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, because again, even though I feel the clip right here, it's not uncomfortable. It's just like a pad that I'm holding against, so it's noticeable. It's not uncomfortable. Yeah, just shorten the clip a little bit, maybe. But I'm not going to complain. It's well away from the lock bar cutout, so there's no issues whatsoever. And it rests not on the lock bar, but on the flat of the titanium scale. Standoff. Dog. My tormentor. Okay, so this is a wonderful knife. And my word, this thing came sharp and aggressive, and even though it hasn't been used a ton, I have used it, I have cut with it, and it has not lost it. Like, I really don't want to pull my fingers on this thing much, because it feels like it's starting to go in. Oh, also, lock bar. Great access. This is one of those personal things. Something that stands out to me about this knife is when you go to disengage the lock bar, you have this scalloped curved scale, and then the lock bar is this almost straight stick. And the juxtaposition of that next to that, the way it feels, something about it feels very unique. It's not, I mean, it's just a lock bar, but it feels interesting. I don't know why. It's one of the personality traits of this knife for me. Great access, super easy to disengage, no problem whatsoever. We are centered. The grind does favor the clip a tiny bit. That might just need an adjustment. But as soon as you start getting into semi-hand ground kind of stuff, you run the risk of, like, hard to tell, you know? And we are centered. So that was just a... Yep, centered, no play, we're good. Wasn't a problem. I may have just tightened it down a little too much last time I messed with it. So, what are we looking at? For the basic titanium, and these kind of work in an interesting way. When you order them from African Sporting Goods, there's something, what's that website called? It's called African Sporting Creations, is typically where you can get these things. I will link it. Oftentimes, these are pre-orders. You order it and then you wait for it to be made, because that's how they're being made by a small team in Arno Bernard. Lots of handwork of finishing, execution, precision, yes. Sometimes they are available on the website. Right now they are. There are some available. Plain titanium ones, quite a few variants of kudu bone are available. But the plain titanium ones come in at $499. And yes, it's expensive, but again, this is bridging the gap into semi-custom territory. It's coming out of South Africa. It's being worked on by hand. It's not coming off of a giant machine like most production knives. It's much in the vein of a Chris Reeve knife. That's also part of the reason it's compared. And it feels it. It's one of those knives where it may not be as flashy as some other $500 knife, but it feels like it is somehow still a step up in quality and finish and execution. It is just so precise feeling and so glassy and smooth and dialed in, and the tolerances. It's, again, sort of heirloom kind of quality. So, base models come in $499, carbon fiber inlays and like synthetic ivory and micarta around $629. You're at about $650 for the bone stuff. Ironwood adds a little bit. And then there's a mammoth molar inlay, which, yeah, that adds money because it's mammoth molar. But this thing is so good. So good. I swear, I've never missed a flipper, and I rarely ever miss that, except while doing videos. Again, the new ones have a cutout, so not a problem. This is just a cool, fun knife. And it's a really functional knife, and it's a really nice to see. I mean, I like South African makers, but normally it's you purely get customs out of that territory. And they're great, but this is wonderful. And I think it definitely deserves its price, even though it is expensive. This is just a good knife. So, the Arno Bernard Imamba. Thanks for watching. This is a definite recommendation for if you want to get something that's really just kind of precision all the way. That's all. I'm going to go tend to the needy dog. Yes, he's here. See ya.